Okay, so today we are going to talk about cross-site scripting attacks, also known as XSS attacks, which is one of the most common security attacks that we are facing even till today. Um, so, as developers, building secure web application is our job. So when we made some mistakes or if the code is vulnerable to attacks, the use some hackers or some other people just try to attack your website. So before going to that, let me tell you what are the things that we are going to talk about today. So first, we are going to have a look at what is an XSS attack, and also we are going to run some basic XSS attack on some of the local projects that I created, and also we are going to take a look at on how to defend against those attacks, and also we can take a look at briefly at uh, other types of attacks as well. Um, so yeah, XSX attacks. So what is an XSS attacks? Does anyone knows about this? Have you heard about this or something like that?
Yeah, I have briefly heard about it, but I don't know much about it though.
Yeah, so cross-site scripting attacks are a type of injection which will users or hackers or whatever people just trying to run malicious scripts on our website. So usually on our browser because we haven't used proper security guidelines, so the website is vulnerable to those attacks. So if so what the hacker does is just he's trying to run a script using the inputs or some kind of mostly using this inputs that we have in the browser, for let's say it's a form or something like that. So that's how it works. This can be done a lot of damage to the our application and also for our users as well. So this is a pretty serious problem with our web applications. So let's take a look at how this attacking thing works. Uh, so let me the start some one of the sample projects that I found some from the GitHub. So let me show how it works first. So this is just a sample, like I don't think like I can say lower, and I can post add my image so it will just render it down there. So imagine this can be your blog post website or your product showcasing website or something like that, because if there's a user input that user can uh, user can add inputs, this there might be a problem with your input. So we have to check whether if the there's an potential XSS attack in your website. So the first thing we can do is to check whether this one is vulnerable to our this XSS attacks. Um, First, we can run some kind of script in here because this is just an input. and let's basically try to okay. So let's add the script. Let's say we want to say hi, and again let me add the same image. Yeah, but as you can see, nothing happened. But let me inspect the code and see what happened. So if I go to this uh, p uh, p tag, there is the script tag that I just added. So the reason for that this script didn't execute is these modern browsers are no, this is some kind of a script attack, so it just ignore this scripting attacks, so it doesn't work like that way. So we have to use some kind of another way to uh, attack this website. But we now know that it renders HTML. We can use this input to render HTML tags inside this code. So now we know that, and also actually we don't have to run this crypto and hope that this might work, or we can just inspect our code, and we can see this JavaScript file, and we can see how it works. For example, if we take a look at this JavaScript file, actually usually this JavaScript files not look like this because most of the sites minified them. So if it is minified, it will remove these white spaces, and it will have some weird variable names, and it will be little bit hard to read. But yet you can still go through this code and see whether there are some vulnerabilities in this code. So for example, um, so how this, let's see how this one works. So we have a form submitting function, um, and it just pushing our text and image to an array called a user messages. But in real world example, this would just push this message to a database. um, so then after adding them to this user messages array, uh, and we are setting these input values for empty, and then we are calling this render messages function. Let's see how this render messages function work. So as you can see, it just iterates over the user messages and create this string, which is which contains the HTML tags and stuff. And in the end, we it just use inner HTML to uh, add this message to the DOM. So if we take a look at this, um, so we can see that it just renders the our image and the text right here. So when I add the script tag, it just added, it will just get added to this p tag, and it will get executed. But the browser knows that this is a script, and it just ignored that part. So that's why it didn't work. So the most common way to do this attack is using an image tag, which is surprising. So let me just create show how it done. So we're just creating an image with without a source. We're just adding the source, but we don't give it a source. And there's a function with this image tag, which is called on error. What this on error does is it allows us to run a script if there's an error with the image tag. So let's say I want to alert hi. You can see inject the script to the website, and it says hi. So as you can see now, we can successfully inject various kinds of codes using this method. So all we have to do is create an image tag without giving a source, and all we have to do is give it some kind of code that which will be executed because there's no source, so it will go through to this on error function and it will execute it. So you might think, oh, this is something, this is not that bad. I mean, we are just trying to alert use and stuff. But imagine usually we store our session IDs on cookies. So even we can just access the cookies using document.cookies like that. So if a hacker gets our session ID, which is really bad, that we should because with the session ID we can do various stuff. So and again you can just always empty this, we can just break this site, just write some code. So let's write something like document.element inner html to empty string return image. Okay. Yeah, as you can see, it just emptied the whole website just because I added that JavaScript part to the to the on error function. So it just executed, and so the whole website is broken now. I mean, um, yeah. So imagine a user add this to a database, and when the user tries to get this image or this text from the database, this will get executed, and your website will be broken. So this is another example. So let's have a look at another example uh, on how to uh, deploy this XSS attack. So was the code for that one. So let me just close the live server. And let me run the other one. As you can see, this is just another website with the uh, search search bar. So if I run something, it just says I queried this, and it just going to add this to the URL. So even in here, let me do the same. So image src, and let me say alert. Say let's say hacked or something like that. So let's execute this and say it says hacked. So what's wrong with this one is that, let me, if I share this link with someone, let's try to open it with in another tab. If I paste this one, it will run the same script because it just added to the query and stuff. So if you take a look at this code, can inspect, go to sources, and you can see our main JS file. This one is simple, just it also uses inner HTML just to add this HTML tags dynamically. So this is the basic way of how an XSS attack works. Mm, yeah, let's continue the presentation. So let's talk about how to prevent this. So how to prevent this, we can use uh, various kinds. So first one is sanitizing our HTML. So what sanitizing just is, just it just um, try to identify these patterns. For example, if we try to run this image type of script inside this input, it will just ignore it. If we take, this is one of the really good one of the libraries that we have to sanitize our HTML. So if we take a look at this, I mean, this says it has this particular pattern that we try to uh, we use to inject a JavaScript to our website. So this is one of the ways that you can use to prevent this from happening. And another thing is using a front-end library. We can use React, Vue, or AngularJS, which comes with these features. We don't have to sanitize HTML or something like that because those libraries ships with those features. And also in a project, real life project, we are using a lot of npm packages we use to add uh, various kinds of functionality. So let's say, for example, let's say I want to add the image crop function. We can just search something from the npm package and we can just add it to our project. But the problem with this is uh, we are not the one who write those libraries, and those libraries might be vulnerable to these attacks. So so we have to careful with using those libraries. But npm provide this npm audit function. We can just, or we have to just run npm audit. It will show what are the vulnerable packages that we are using. For example, let's say I said that uh, let's say it's a image cropping library, but it's once I run npm audit, it says this has some kind of vulnerability, just don't use it. So we can use npm audit to uh, see the vulnerabilities on in the libraries that we use. And also it's always better to uh, reduce the amount of third-party libraries that we use in our projects, because it will improve sorry if we try to minimize the libraries that we used in our projects, it will improve our uh, performance, and also it will be helpful for increase our security of the application, because all we have to care about what we write, not about others write. So, and also in here again we can just always uh, uh, change the code base also. So for example, let's let me open this project's code, which is this one. We go to this main js file. So that's something else. So if we take a look at this ready function, it's get the query from this url, and it just sets the query input value as the query. And also uh, in here query output, it uses it just shows the query part that we got from the url. So in here we can just it use in html to render this part. We can always use in a text, because we don't need any dynamic HTML tags to add. So we just need to add the what do you call, the text that we provide here. So instead of using in HTML, we can use in a text. Yeah, as you can see, once I used in a text, it doesn't run the script because it just renders this as a string. So that's one thing we can do to uh, prevent to use we can use to prevent from XSS attacks. Um, so um, Yeah, so there are lots of other types of attacks that we, there's most of the website face daily. So the great resource that I found to be updated on this about this kind of attacks is OWASP. Let me show it, which is a foundation which stands for the free and open source software security community. So what they does is they just keep documenting this attack. So if we go to this attacks using this link, so it lists all kinds of attacks that we have ever faced. For example, we in here we have this cross-site scripting, cross-site tracing, uh, various types of injections like MySQL injection, sorry, SQL injections, and spyware, different types of attacks that we face. So if we when go to cross-site scripting, it will give some links how to avoid this cross-site scripting, how it works, why how to protect ourselves from that, and some example code snippets that how to use how these attacks usually the patterns of this attack. So I mean we use this one, for example, like the on error function. So all we have to do is just provide the non-existing image and it just go through this uh, on error function. So this is a great source, so you can read this. And also every year they go through the last year's top 10 attacks and create a document about those top 10 attacks we faced last year. So for example we have this document which contains the top 10 attacks or security risks that we faced 2020. And even in here if we can see cross-site scripting is at number 7, which is not good. So we can in here everything is document examples, scenarios, references, how to prevent, and how to how it impacts you, and things like that. This is a great resource you can use. So when you're building your next application, you can always be updated with the latest kinds of attacks and try to you can write a code that is not vulnerable to those attacks. So here are the resources that I showed you. So thank you. That's it. So that's how cross-site scripting works, and yeah, how to prevent this type of attacks.